As a child, I remember my mother used to cook these incredible pork chops with a rosemary cream sauce. I loved it so much that I had to create a recipe that kind of takes me back to those moments. Today, I'm gonna be teaching you how to make pork chops with a rosemary cream sauce. This recipe will teach you how to make flavorful, juicy pork chops. The steps that I'm gonna show you include making a brine and brining the pork chops, searing them, deglazing the pan, and then making a delicious, decadent pan sauce. Let's get cooking. The butcher shop gave me these incredibly large pork chops, but they don't have to be this big, I will admit. These are a little jumbo on the size, but it's gonna be perfect. The ultimate key to making these pork chops super juicy is a wet brine. That brine is going to penetrate the meat and make the interior have a higher liquid content, so that when I sear them and cook them, that juiciness remains. The perfect ratio for a wet brine is 4 cups of water to a 1/4 cup of salt and then a 1/4 cup of sugar. To that, you can add whatever flavors you want to. So to start making a brine, we have to dissolve the salt and the sugar. I'm just gonna put about a cup of water in here with the 1/4 cup of salt and 1/4 cup of sugar. Now I'm adding the aromatics for the brine. So a couple of cloves of garlic, about a tablespoon of mustard. Now we're just gonna heat this up just until the salt and the sugar dissolves. The kitchen smells like rosemary right now. It's very nice. It looks like the sugar and salt has completely dissolved. So now it's time to dilute the brine. I'm gonna grab some ice to cool it down. I've got 1 cup of ice, 2 cups of cold water, and my super sugary, salty 1 cup of water with all the aromatics for the brine. The reason that I put ice in it is because this helps cool down the hot, concentrated brine and dilute it all at the same time. You know, I wanna cover my pork chops in cold brine so that it's food safe before putting it in the refrigerator. This looks great. Let's get them brining. I'm pushing the pork chops down in the liquid so that they're mostly submerged in the brine. That really helps make sure that that salt and sugar can reach all the different parts. And now they're gonna brine for about 4 to 12 hours in the fridge. Got my pork chops. They have been brining for 8 hours, and then I took them out and after they were done brining, and laid them out on the sheet tray to dry out. It's really important before I go to the step of searing that I've thoroughly dried the pork chops. Searing, let's get into it. The first step of proper searing is a pan. I love cast iron because they're heavy and thick. And what that means is they heat up slower, but they retain heat longer. And that makes a better, more even sear. Second, oil. For searing, you want a high temp oil. This is grapeseed, it's perfect. Third step, get your pan hot. We want it really hot. And the cues for when the oil is hot enough is it spreads throughout the bottom of the pan, but then when you tilt it, it'll kind of glisten and move and look like it has like lines or streaks in it. That's when I know that it's perfect for searing. This looks good. The pan looks ready. That is the sound that we're looking for. I'm only going to sear 2 at a time because that's what I can fit in my pan. So we'll sear them in 2 batches. The reason is because I don't want to overcrowd the pork chops. We're letting it kind of develop that nice brown crust on the outside. I'm just gonna sear them until they're nice and caramelized on the outside. For this recipe, I want to finish cooking them in that delicious cream sauce to build flavor and also so I can monitor when they're done so that they're super tender and juicy. Oh yeah, they're looking good. Later, when they're cooking with the sauce, I want to be able to check to the perfect doneness of the pork chop. And if I overcook them in the searing step, they'll be dry and overcooked later. They'll take a minute or 2 on each side to sear really well. There's a lot of flavor that's being built in the searing process. Proper searing is mostly about flavor building. This is to brown that fat on the outside. These look great. Next batch. The pork chops are seared, and now it's time to deglaze the pan. I'm gonna add 1 cup of onion. Deglazing is when you add something with moisture to the pan, and what happens is as that moisture starts to simmer and bubble, I'm grabbing all of those little delicious brown bits of flavor that were stuck to the bottom of the pan when I seared the chops. The smell of onions cooking in little bits of crusty, delicious pork chop is really wonderful. It smells like the sweetness of the onions with that rich umami flavor of seared pork. Once the onions are soft, it's time to cook the garlic. I've got 4 cloves of sliced garlic. And the way that I love to add garlic to a pan is to move my onions or whatever else I have in the pan off to one side. I'm gonna add a little bit of olive oil. I don't need a high heat oil. Olive oil will work here because I'm not trying to brown the garlic, just, get it nice and flavorful. Add that over to this side where I put that oil. Garlic is really delicate. I mean, once it starts to brown, it goes from golden brown to burnt in no time. So that's why I like to cook it off to the side by itself. I feel like I can see it a little better where it's at. I'm not trying to really brown it very much, just to release the aromas of the garlic, which I now smell. So we're gonna toss that back in with all of the onion and make our pan sauce. The perfect pan sauce ratio for me is a 1/2 cup of wine and a cup of other liquid to make the sauce, whether that's stock or other. In this sauce, I'm doing 1/2 stock, 1/2 cream for my liquid. The wine has now reduced at least halfway, like you want to cook most of it out. And now it's time to add in 1/2 cup of chicken stock, 1/2 cup of cream, a couple sprigs of rosemary, and 1 tablespoon of mustard. I'm gonna whisk that mustard, cream, stock all together. This is simmering. I'm gonna nestle the pork chops back into the sauce. It's all about letting those pork chops cook and simmer until they're done. When I was searing the pork chops, I was not cooking them through. They're still rare inside. This is the step where we're finishing cooking the pork. Cooking the pork chops on the stovetop in this sauce allows me to make sure that I don't overcook them because I can keep a constant, vigilant eye on them. The pork chops are done. When I press on them, they bounce back. So I am going to take them out and finish the sauce. This looks perfect. The sauce is nice and kind of viscous. And I took out the pork chops and finished the sauce because that makes sure I don't dry out the meat. If I was serving this to my family, I might nestle those pork chops back inside, which we'll do because it looks beautiful, and then take the whole pan to the table. The best part of the whole dish is in this sauce right here. I can't wait to dig in. Takes me right back to being a little kid. It's like that rich, creamy, the pininess from the rosemary, the acidity from the white wine, and then that kind of tangy mustard coming in. And the pork chops are so juicy, cooked to that perfect medium. It's like, this is exactly what you're looking for. I love this recipe because not only is it super delicious and flavorful, but each step of the process is a way to ensure that you end up with super tender, juicy meat.